East and West Learning Connections
helps people of different cultures break barriers and connect with each other.
Together, let's make learning and connections happen.
Together, we make cross-cultural learning and connections happen.
Some of the tools that we use to communicate with the directors are first set drawings, technical drawings, but the primary tool, I think, is the three-dimensional maquette or model. Maquette is the fancy French name for it. All right, so this is the maquette, and you'll see, it might not be too obvious from the screen, but you'll see that it's just made out of simple things like wooden dowel and paper and bits of cotton and lots of paint. We love paint. This will show the director sort of how much space there is on the stage. This particular model is 1/4 inch, so it's very small, but it will give the director an idea of how he can block the actors, blocking being telling them where they should be moving in each scene. This particular set is fairly static. We didn't have a scene change. We did all of our mood changes with lighting. Had a wonderful lighting designer whose name slips my mind right now. Oh dear. But you can see there's a little person there who's 6 feet tall in scale. And you can tell there weren't too many people in this play. I think a maximum 6 people on stage ever. So it was okay to kind of throw all kinds of, for lack of a better word, crap on the stage in the form of exotic flowers, and we wanted a kind of surreal feel, so we just pulled out all kinds of plants from the stock in the prop storage and painted them all this sort of monochromatic color, just to give it a kind of ghostly sense. So that's the balcony of what we just saw in real life. That is a sort of a dusk feeling, and then we can go to the night slide. But anyway, just to give an idea of how a very static place can give you different feelings, different emotional feelings.
So this song is from a Sleeping Beauty musical that I wrote and presented last year. This is what's called a want song. And in Disney, you'll see it a lot. So for example, Ariel from Little Mermaid will literally say the words or sing the words, "I want to be where the people are." Belle will say, "I want adventure in the great wide somewhere. I want. And it literally tells you what the main character wants. So this is Sleeping Beauty's want song. She wants her life and to have control of her life. So I sit down and I say, well, what is the moment that she's about to sing here? And the moment is everything has come to a head and she needs to make a decision on how to change her life. So I sit down at the piano, I go, what does this feel like? Well, it doesn't feel like it's a minor key. It doesn't feel like it's there's nothing minor about this moment, and it has to have optimism and hope. So it starts out with just now, I could have changed that last chord to, but that's too dark, and it takes away from the hope of what Sleeping Beauty is trying to achieve. So I'll keep it major. And then very simply, I'm not going to sing it for you, but I'm going to explain the process. So it's just the simplest of piano. And she says, this is my life right now. This is what I've been going through. It's not great. I've just been sitting here waiting. I have no control over what I can do. And then she explains more how difficult it is. And that's where the movement starts coming in, because she starts getting stirred. kind of starts taking this step up, and you can actually physically see her stand up, and she says, okay, maybe I need to make a change. Maybe something can happen. And it keeps growing and such. And that keeps going until the first chorus of she says, so here I am, here and now. Things are changing, things are growing, I can make this happen. And then finally the chorus ends with a big climax of, it all comes together, I finally remember, this is who I forgot to be. And so now that's the first verse. I've written that whole thing, I felt it out. And then the second verse comes along, and the second verse can't go.
After you've done fabric swatching and done sketches and things like that, then you are actually dealing with the actor who has to wear the clothes. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the story of To Kill a Mockingbird, but this is Atticus on his way to court. And Pete Donaldson, the actor, so this isn't actually Atticus in court, but this is Atticus with Scout, his daughter. And again, I don't know if you can tell on the screen, but it was a linen and silk combination, because the weather is hot down there. As a costume designer, you have to know, you're kind of like a reporter for the character, you know, who, when, where, why, and what's the weather like. Are they inside? Are they outside? Are they high fashion, low fashion, poor, rich? All these things. It's like you have to know inside the character. The actor has a lot to say about that too. Pete Donaldson, who's no longer with us, was a very down-to-earth actor, and he actually, I think the nicest thing he said to me was, because the show happens over a number of days and weeks, in fact, and so normally a gentleman of the South would change their socks, perhaps. But I worked it out so that Pete could keep his socks on for he didn't have to change his socks. Not even at intermission, he didn't have to change his socks. And he just thought that was the best thing, because, you know, it's their time, and they want to not be thinking about their socks. They just want the socks to be right. And we could go to the next slide. So this is at the courthouse, and you'll see here there's a character that's, you know, the other lawyer working at his desk in his shirt sleeve because it's hot. You know, we've got fans going in the courthouse, and the Spanish moss kind of waving around. Same kind of Spanish moss that we used in the previous set, except in Edmonton, it was made out of cotton cheesecloth. In Stratford, it was made out of a very fine silk, and you know, which we then cut and shred. You know, did all of those things. And people often joke at Stratford, you know, the budgets are so big, everything's made out of silk, but there is a reason. Silk lights beautifully. Silk lasts fairly long time. Certain kinds of, you know, rough silk last very well. It can pretend to be other fabrics sometimes, where you just get a really organic feeling with the silk. So it's my preferred fabric, although, you know, wool is okay too, and linen, but sort of knowing what fabrics can do and how they can light, and how they can help a character. You know, is it a stiff character? Is it a flowy character? All of that. And I'm kind of digressing here. I was going to talk about the coveralls on Dion to the left in the picture, and they are just, you know, regular old. I think we got them at the TSC in town in Stratford. But while I'm on silk, what we often, if we're lucky and if we're doing a period show, it will end up being built from scratch, commonly built and pulled from stock, and then alterations done to it.
When you design the costumes, would you consider the light effects on the stage?
Yes. Yes, and there's been more than one or two times when you have to kind of go up to the lighting designer and bargain, with what's happening. And we did a My Fair Lady in Edmonton one year, and Henry Higgins had this beautiful, beautiful, sort of greeny brown suit, and it looked fantastic in the fittings. We had bought the fabric from Ruby International, I think, and all was good. And then we had the scene that he was in this suit, and it turned brown. Differently, polyesters are notorious for not lighting the same as what you see in a natural daylight situation. And you kind of go, how did that happen? And yet another reason why we prefer silk, because it gives you consistent colors. It gives you the same color in the fitting room as and on stage. Both Shaw and Stratford spend a lot of time teaching their young actors how to move in their costumes, and they can also afford to be fairly accurate with rehearsal costumes that they send into rehearsal, which even if you can't be very accurate, if you're in rehearsal and the play, it's usually more important. I shouldn't say it's more important for women, because it's not, because men don't wear they don't wear suits and jackets the way that they used to, and they don't know how to flip their tails in a tailcoat. So rehearsal costumes are essential to get the feel of wearing a long petticoat. And a lot of times the rehearsal costumes will be like a corset and a petticoat for the women, and jackets, and pretty much jackets for men, and hard shoes rather than sneakers. Now they don't rehearse in that all the time, or their feet would hurt too much, but they need to be wearing shoes to create the walk that they would have for that time. And you sit differently. You do everything differently if you're in a bias cut dress, or what happens when you're working on a show and it's not working out?
Because I work alone, I'm the only one to blame, is usually what happens. However, I have, I think what really makes me different than a lot of artists is I have a core group of people that I go to with everything I do. And that includes people who are great at what they do and give great feedback, but also people who are just really, really negative and not helpful and very critical, because I want to know what they will say. And then I have people who I rarely go to the people who always say something nice, because there's no benefit in that. I get nothing from that. Mixing and mastering for audio, my clients who knew nothing about mixing and mastering would give me feedback on the mixes and masters that I gave them. And I would say a good 8 to 9 times out of 10, they were right. And they said, oh, this has too much bass. It needs more guitar. It needs more reverb, less reverb, whatever. And they were right. They knew absolutely nothing about mixing, but they made my mixes better. So I'm really big on getting feedback from people on my work, to make sure that I'm hitting the mark. And thus far, it seems to be working. I get a broad range to really round out. And ultimately, even if I'm going to people like yourselves and I just say, is this boring? Do you find this slow? And if 3 people on 3 separate occasions say yes, it's slow. Done. I rewrite it on Zoom. So the question was, places like Disney have cookie cutter formulas. How do I stay away from that? 2 ways. I just heard this great story. It's a guitarist. I don't know who he is or where he's from, but he's a rock guitarist, famous. And he says he doesn't know any musical notes or any chords. So if you tell him E minor, he has no idea what that is. But if you play it for him, he'll figure it out. They're like, oh, this string here, this string. Oh, that's an E minor. Okay, sure. And someone said to him, why didn't you learn? Or why don't you learn the notes? And he said, because I've written some really great songs without knowing the notes. And if I learned it, then I would know that the next chord after E minor should be C. But because I don't know that, I do whatever I want and it comes out creatively. And I loved that. So I don't do that because I do know the notes, but what I do is I creatively vomit. So I just pour out every creative idea, musical motif, anything, and I just write it down, record it on a tape recorder, anything I can, and then I start piecing it together like a puzzle afterwards. Again, not thinking about structure or commercialism, just thinking about what feels really cool or beautiful or emotional. And then once I have that draft, which is my first draft, then I go back and I start kind of chipping away at it. But I'm very careful not to chip so much that I lose the essence of what I originally vomited. Sorry for the vulgar language. Anyone? Yes.
Are you gonna apply AI in the future to help you?
Am I gonna employ AI? I I can only answer that right now because of what AI is right now. And I can say that how I use AI now is to refine, to maybe give me a different way of wording something, not necessarily in my creative writing, but in my like emails. Um, but what I have done is I'm working on a new show right now that has five storylines. Um, and what I've done is I did a quick synopsis of each storyline and I fed it into ChatGPT. And I said, make this storyline better. And all they would say things like, "Oh, you could have the main character fail at this, and succeed here, and things like that." And I don't necessarily take it. I don't think I actually took any of the suggestions, but it was nice to be able to have a conversation with someone about these ideas and them throw out different suggestions. And usually, what I always say is, if you give me any idea, it doesn't matter how bad it is, it might trigger me into thinking about some other idea, which I think is how AI has done it for me.
Thank you. And how about the music?
And the music, I'm working on a commercial right now for a famous singer, which I can't name. And uh, the ad agency put into AI, give me a song that sounds like this in this style from this era. And it did a really good job. I was really impressed and scared because it was too good for now. Imagine what it'll be in 10 years, right? So I want to say no, but I have a feeling at some point it's going to be so good. But perhaps the artistry then is to decide how to use that tool rather than just taking it for what it is and claiming it as your own.
AI is a really, really hard question with, all the arts, because the AI didn't really make it up. They stole it from, I use the word stole because that's what they're doing, is stealing it from other artists and other creators and then mashing it together. And it is scary how good it can be. I mean, a lot of the visual stuff still has that uncanny valley. Is that the term? I think about it, and then people having too many fingers or not enough fingers and things like that. Like you can tell that it is AI now, but very, very soon people probably won't be able to. And then you get into a whole conundrum of, does art just become a circular thing with no
Things of what Charlotte was saying, that one, it is an aggregate, but in a way, that's also what we do when we create. I'm influenced by the composers that I listen to. Oh. And I think ultimately, we don't know in 10 years. I would say right now, absolutely not. I agree with you 100%. In 2 years, probably not. In 10 years, maybe.
Who knows?
Maybe.
Who knows?
Yeah. But in the same breath, as Charlotte was saying about art being circular, with no new ideas coming in, we're actually running out of battery on your phone here. Oh, we've got 15%. We're good. But with the way art is going now with commercialism, and what Ron's question dealt with about the cookie cutter formula, I kind of feel like we're already caught in a bit of a circular. When is the last time you went to a movie for the sake of going to a movie? I remember when I was younger, I would say to my friends all the time, "What are you doing this weekend? Do you want to go see a movie?" I have not said that for about 10 years. Uh, and then so smaller movies can't be made anymore because of that. So now we only have Mission Impossible, Jurassic Park, Marvel, superhero movies, and uh, uh, so that's what we have in the movie theaters. And then on things like Netflix, they have all the metrics of what you're doing because they have access to your camera, at least motion sensor, to say, oh, they're watching or they're doing the dishes while they're watching this Netflix show. So what Netflix is doing now is they're telling all of their writers, tell the audience what you're doing, but then go do it. So if you're watching a Netflix show and someone says, fine, I'm going to go to the kitchen, and then they'll go to the kitchen. It's so that when you're doing the dishes and you're not watching, you know now that the scene is in the kitchen. So that has changed the way art is created. And so you have the superhero blockbuster movie idea. You have this happening on digital streaming mediums. Uh, they know what people are watching, what people aren't watching, what they get tired of, what they turn off. So where does that leave true art and creation for the future in conjunction with AI?
Too much. The other one was a girl with incredibly punked out, pink and yellow hair, just beating on those drums like it was tribal. And I think there was more ferocity in the drums that she was beating than even the crowd. But I also do think it was working the crowd up a little bit. And AI is not going to give you that.
No, but I think the problem is people aren't going to give that a chance. So the theater audiences are smaller, movie audiences are smaller, all kind of art form audiences are smaller, except for concerts. That has been consistent. So we all want to interact with people. We knew from COVID, we needed to spend time. But then now that COVID's over, we've kind of all reverted back to going home and spending a nice night at home, perhaps watching this on Zoom. Zoom meetings, I have many of them. We don't do them in person anymore. My friend said, you have to go watch Sinners. It's the best movie I've seen in so long. And my first instinct was, when is it coming to Netflix or streaming so that I don't have to go out to watch it? And I'm a creator and I'm the one saying that I don't want to go out. So yeah, I agree with you, Charlotte, that you cannot replace that. You can't replicate that live feeling, but we're losing the audiences.
Yeah. And make no mistake, COVID just really threw everybody for a loop.
Yeah, derailed.
I mean, I know myself, I didn't want to go out. And then for a couple of years after COVID, I didn't want to go out.
Creating art, right?
So Yang is asking about my musical, The Man with the Golden Heart, and why I wrote it and the purpose of creating art. So The Man with the Golden Heart is a story about a man who is, it's in the fantastical world of Benjamin Button, that idea where it's reality, but it's just an anomaly. So he's born with a heart of gold and he helps people who are hurt and struggling. But each time he does, he gives away a piece of his heart and it kills him a little bit. So the more he gives, the faster he'll die. So he questions whether or not it's worth giving at all. So I wrote it because I feel that the world has evolved and changed to less kind and less considerate and less selfless. And I wanted to write a show about someone who saw all that, who could help everyone, but at a cost. So his struggle and his journey in the show is, why should I kill myself for this world that's so terrible? And I don't want to ruin the ending of the show, but there's hope. And quite honestly, when I wrote it, I didn't want to write the ending to have hope because I'm very pessimistic about the world, but I knew I had to write a hopeful ending. Otherwise, everyone's gonna leave going, this guy's crazy. Um, but it's for the best. The show is better this way. And then in terms of purpose of art, I mean, we are, as we just talked about, in this place of losing audiences and um, uh, being underfunded. And I work alone because can't afford to hire 80 people under me. People don't understand how much a musical costs to make. Um, I can give you an idea. A small theater, like an 800-seat theater musical with a five-piece band and a 10-person cast, uh, we're talking upfront costs of about $750,000, and then you try to recoup that with ticket sales. It's an enormous cost, and people don't understand that when they see that ticket prices are $100 or whatnot. So we're in this place of why create art? I've posed this before. We don't make money. We kind of do a run of it and then it's over, so nothing happens afterwards. It's so much work. It's difficult to get audiences, so why do it? And this is a question that I asked a musician friend of mine once, and she answered, and it changed everything for me. So I said, why should I do it? Why should I do it? And then she said, if you're going to look at it from those points of view, then no one would make art ever. This would be a completely artless world because art doesn't usually make money, and most people don't go see the avant-garde artistic stuff, and it is an enormous amount of work. So really and truly, I believe we have to find uh, our purpose and our passion. And Ron actually said this to me once. You said something about my talent, and you said it is. I can't remember the exact wording, but you said something like it's a crime to not continue offering your art to the world because you have a gift to share. Whereas most people don't have that gift to share. They have something else to share. So once you find that purpose of what you want to do with your art and your creation, it's ultimately, again, talking about the Marvel movies and the commercialism, we have to produce what we are passionate about. That will break that circular echo chamber of AI art. We must have artists creating what they want to create unabashedly, wholeheartedly, diving in headfirst to create true art. And it could be awful. And that's fine. That's part of the process. That's part of the journey and the history of art. But if everyone is trying to make the next Netflix hit show or the next Marvel movie, then that is the end of art. Yes.
Yeah, it's a question about right now the internet we provide an infinite amount of information. People start with attention, right? Mm-hmm. Attention becomes scarce. Mm-hmm. That's for individual. For group of people, it's losing meaningful engagement. Mm-hmm. Mostly driven like fast reaction, emotion. For me, theater is it's a mirror for the society to look at its own behavior. It's really what we are doing. Look at nowadays, it's really look at the society, what we do, what's period of history we resemble most. Mm-hmm. We are losing that. Mm-hmm. I'm really thankful for the music, the costume design to make it happen. But really down to how can we really slow people down to make people to reflect. Look at what we're doing. Be cautious of what we're doing. I find it's so hard to do. I want to share because the AI technology does make making art easier,
but
we are losing art from that. It's it's controversy. Just want to you share your.
So the question is, how do we make people slow down and engage with art rather than
look at
and look at it and reflect.
Yeah.
I have some thoughts and I can pass on to you if you'd like. Okay. I was listening to a podcast recently about childhood depression and anxiety, and they did a statistic where I think they started in the 1930s and 1940s, 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, 2000s. It's just a straight line across. It does not go up. Same amount of children were depressed and anxious in 1930 as they were in 1980, percentage-wise, until the iPhone was invented. And then it goes straight up like that. Yeah. So obviously that's a major factor, if not not the iPhone itself, but the internet, devices and screens. TikTok. I remember before the internet, when I was making music, like records, people would say, oh, it's all going to be ringtones. It's not going to even be a song on the radio or a CD you buy. You're just going to buy a ringtone. And that is going to be music. That's the music industry. It's even shorter than that now. It's shorter than a ringtone. It's a 5-second Instagram reel or whatever that you just scroll through and you just hear 2 notes of the song. So how do we get people to engage? Charlotte.
Well, I don't know if this is going to work or not, but I do, thinking about AI and thinking about, a lot of costume designers and set designers have very, very fully gone onto the iPad and the drawing systems that they have and stuff like that. And I've been slow, maybe because I'm afraid, I don't know, because I still do watercolor and I still do magic marker and, sort of old school sketching. But it comes to the thing, like eventually, say the power's out, and you can't make blue on your iPad. What are you going to do? How are you going to make that blue? How are you going to know that green, that green and that yellow mixed together makes blue? And that's a real thing. It's a tangible thing. It's not, going blue, yellow, doing the tapping and stuff. So there's and with this world that we're living in, this sounds all very, apocalyptic or whatever, but, when the power goes or when the food stops or all this stuff, it's kind of, I think it's kind of, there's the sort of cottage core trends that are going on with people going back to the land and, the way they did in the 70s, but, maybe fancier dresses. And there is a real human desire to do things the old-fashioned way and to, get your blue from a big rock of cobalt as opposed to getting your blue off of a screen. It's gentler on your eyes, that's for sure. And I don't have really an answer, but
I don't know if there is an answer other than like if we're talking about our children and screens, and as soon as you give them a screen, it's done. They're gone.
There was a baby in the stroller in the elevator at the Bay
with a screen.
Yeah. Like a baby.
and I'm not judging. I'm saying like it's just this is like you can't not have a screen these days. I tried to get a dumb phone, like a flip phone, and someone said you have to sign this contract now, and I went okay, and I have to pull out my there's no way of getting around it, but how do I look at concerts, for example, and why is Taylor Swift's concert $1,000 a ticket and people are dying to go? Oh, you had an answer? No. But why is that the case? But yet we can't get people to come out to see such and such.
Because you get to share bracelets.
Oh, sure, bracelets.
But it's the human connection.
It is the yes,
concert.
absolutely.
Like the audience. I've never been to a Taylor Swift, but from what I gather, the audience is just, it's like a big love fest.
Yeah, but there is that in other shows as well. So I mean, all I can say is, you know, to encourage people, like you said, you force yourself to go out. And I'm forcing myself to go see a movie in a movie theater. And I force myself to go see theater. Even I don't necessarily want to go see theater a lot of the time, but I do force myself to try and continue this. And like things I'll do is like I want to support Asian creators, for example. So with like a show is like Kim's Convenience is on Netflix, I'll leave it on loop just so that Netflix thinks I'm watching it a little bit, so that it gets more viewership. But yeah, I don't really have an answer to your question. Do you have any answers to your question?
Not follow up on this. Like, I guess nobody has the answer here, but like when you are trying to create something, and do you sometimes wonder, like why am I doing this? If you know, considering that there are maybe few people going to theater or something, like if like how do you keep yourself from thinking about those things?
Mm-hmm.
And just focus on creating.
I'd like to take that question. I was getting ready for today, and I'm actually a really super shy person. I don't, you know, talking is just like So I have brought all these props with me, and of course, I went to the basement. And I found all this stuff. Well, it had dust all over it, and the tape had all gone snarly, and so there I was. Ron was coming at about, 6 o'clock, and it's 5:15, and my hair is washed but not dried. And I'm changing all the tape on the model boxes so that it's better. So it's up to my standard of what it should be. And I'm going, what am I doing? Nobody's going to look at the tape. But you look at the tape and you like to see that it's a job well done. And I know with any work that I do, whether it's a sketch, whether it's a costume, whether it's a prop, there's a certain point when it's done. And if you keep working at it, it'll get overdone. But that feeling when you know that it's done, it's such a great feeling. It's what you wanted it to be. It's happy in itself, but it's also serving other people that are happy with it. And, there's nothing greater than, with a theater piece, an audience letter. I remember one time reading an audience letter that had been sent, I don't know, 10 years, like it'd been sent right after the show, but I didn't read the show. I didn't read the letter until about 10 years after. And this woman who had gone to a show, and it was set in the 50s. And she had this whole entire reminiscence of what, particular buttons that I had chosen for a dress had done to her memory and her happiness that day. And she obviously felt strong enough about it that she wrote a letter, and like, it doesn't get better than that,
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
So I have a friend, same friend, who asked, why would you ever do art if you're going to look at those criteria? And she's a cellist. She got a full scholarship to Harvard, Juilliard, turned it down to go to a different school. And she was having a conversation with a friend of mine and myself, and said that she practiced 10 hours a day when she was getting ready for school. And when I was singing, I was practicing 3 hours a day. It was like 10 hours a day. So my friend goes, I'm so impressed by your dedication and your discipline. And then my cellist friend goes, no, there's a screw in my head that's different than your head. You don't have this screw. This screw makes me practice 10 hours a day. And I have a screw in my head, and Charlotte has one in her head, where I can't do anything else. If you took this away from me somehow, cut a wire in my head or something, I literally would not know what to do when I woke up in the morning. I'd literally sit there and go,
or in the words of John Ferguson, who is a fabulous set designer who's not with us anymore, when he was having a day like that, what am I going to do? Go to Eaton's and sell shoes? It's that we all have to do what we're doing, or something that feeds into it. Like I'm trying to do more paintings and more photography and stuff like that to keep my mind open, so that the next time I'm doing a show, either it specifically brings something else to the show, or it's just that I'm in a better mood because I was noticing things on the street, and just keeping a healthy. I'm sure there's a book called The Artist's Way, and one, I think the first thing in the book is take yourself on a date or something like that, and it's all about that. It's all about treating your life like it's special, so that you can treat your art like it's special, and that somebody might see it and feel like it's special. Yeah, it's communication. It's like human community. It's a real want of human communication. It's like I love Instagram and stuff like that. And my artist friends and we will trade Instagrams. But look at that blue, and blah blah blah. And look at this crazy guy, and look at these amazing masks from the tiny little village in Africa, and they've got these amazing masks and full body costumes, or costumes made out of flip flops, costumes made out of red what are those things called? The country and western red to go cups. Stuff made out of stuff that you wouldn't normally make stuff out of, which is really useful in the theater because it can just switch the audience around. Like, are those straw people? Why are those straw people? And it's also fun to do sometimes. There was a designer named Leslie Hurry, English designer, who I always wanted to bet. He was my favorite designer when I was going to school. And there were a couple of costumes that the costume teacher had, rescued from the dump in Stratford that were Leslie Hurry costumes. And he used to do drawings that were almost psychedelic, but also Moorish and Turkish and stuff like this. So lots of patterning, lots of gold, lots of beautiful jewel colors. And oh my gosh, I just want to say something to the women in the audience. When you get over 60, you do lose your words and you do lose your train of thought. And I've just lost mine. What was I talking about?
I have a question.
Yes.
So I'm in college right now, and we've been talking about like the shift towards like individuality, especially here in the US, and how like protest theater and the arts have like, especially in theater, there's like this really big community feel to it. How does that manifest for you? How do you think about your work and politics and a group and community feeling, even as someone who works rather independently, at least at the core level?
I think there's always been a bit of that protest thing in my own life personally because of when I grew up, with being very young in the 60s, but still having that whole protest feeling around. At the Shaw Festival in 1984, we did an immersive piece about 1984, and we took over the whole town. We had the audience, I guess it was about 900 audience that we fit into coveralls and marched into different places around town or put them in school buses. We almost had the American Army buzzing the town, but somebody found out about it. So that got canceled. We had book burnings. We had all kinds of the bad totalitarian things that happened in that book, right down to the rat mask at the end of the evening. And I was looking at those pictures again lately because it's been 40 years. And when you look at what's going on, oh, low battery. When you look about what's going on politically, it's an incredibly frightening time right now. I don't know how theater fits into that. It's still at such a grassroots level of what the heck is going on? Like, why doesn't somebody stop this? Didn't you read 1984? Didn't you read your World War II history books? Don't you realize that this is bad, what's going on? It'll come out in the theater, I don't know exactly when. Maybe it comes out in bits now. But we're in it too much for it to actually, for us to have a theatrical observation of it, because it's not finished yet. We're right in the middle of it, and it's a panicking sort of feeling. And it's I've actually personally had to stop looking at the news and stuff like that, and just go outside instead and talk to the old Greek men on the corner that are playing chess. So it will come out, and I hope it will be able to come out still in 10 years, in 5 years, next year. I don't know if that answers your question at all. Is that at all helpful?
We are like running out of time, but I have to ask this question to Andrew. Because I think a lot of us are very interested in you're the second generation of immigrant families, right? So with that experience, how do you think of this experience, and in your career, does that bring any challenges to you? How do you deal with it?
How do I deal with being a second generation?
Yeah, like
from an immigrant family.
Yeah, like yeah.
It's difficult in a lot of ways. I don't want to get into too much social commentary, but I'll say because I was born here, and we had talked about this last week, because I was born here and raised here, one might think I'm Canadian, but I am not. I'm not viewed as Canadian. I'm not accepted as Canadian. And if I were to go back to Korea, where I've never been, I would not be accepted as a Korean. So there is a book out there. I can't remember what it's called. I don't know if it's called The Lost Generation, but that's me. I'm caught in between two worlds. So my self-identity has been forged by my accomplishments, and more so how I feel about myself, understanding my place in the world. So what does that mean for my art and my outlook? It's challenging. There was a grant that I was going to apply for, but when I saw the past winners of the grants, it was always something about, oh, I came to Canada when I was 14 years old, and here's the racism I experienced. I came to Canada when I was 30 years old, and here's my experience. I was born here. I don't really think many people, at least this grant body, would care to say, oh, I was born and raised here. That's all. So there's a lack of cultural grounding that I experience. So for my art, I just write what I know, what I experience, what I feel, what moves me, and that's all I can really do. I can't. My wonderful girlfriend, who's right there, she says to me all the time, like, you just have to do what you do. You can't try to please this organization or this audience. And all you can do is what you do, and do it great, and do it as loudly and proudly as you can. So that's what I do. And through that, whatever my identity or cultural identity or how people see me is, that's up to them. I can just be me and do me as well as I can.
Are you hopeful that people will just look at what you do, like your art, instead of
that people just look at my right? Yeah, ultimately yes, but in the end, physically I look like this, so that has to be taken into account as well. But hopefully by people, let's say I become the world's most famous composer. Well, that's great for people who look like me. That's great for breaking down barriers and opening up opportunities. Great, love it. But I'm not doing it for that. I'm doing it to be me, and if people love it, great, and if people hate it, that's fine too.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Well, become. I'm sure that actually you come from a very traditional heritage here. I mean,
yeah, my family. Yeah.
So in your career, what are some of the biggest challenges for you?
I think unfortunately the woman thing is still a bit of a challenge. I think my generation grew up, at least I grew up, seeing all this stuff happen and watching all these bras being burned and thought, oh, great, excellent. You know, it's all good then. And then you get into a situation where you are, you know, treated not the same in the carpentry shop because you're a woman. So you do, I think, over the years, you know, you end up getting some kind of a shell to make sure that you are taken seriously, because it's still out there, and now it's coming back even more, I think. But it is still there, and costume design is very much still woman's work, as much as we'd like it to be everybody's. It's not. There's like way more women that do it. The pay is lower. The equity pay does not happen. It's starting to get a bit better, but traditionally the costume department is the one that gets paid the least amount of money per hour. Same on a film set. And that's really awful. So there's a certain amount of financial hardship in a way with costume design, set design in theater to a point, but you know, it's there's still times where you go, oh, this is the boys' room here. Okay, how do I give notes after a show to a crew of 8 IATSE guys? And you know, you do it. You just do it. And you know, we also have a lot of people in between the IATSE guys and the designer. You know, we have the technical director, we have the production manager, we have a lot of different routes to giving those notes, but essentially you are still some, you know, on some different crews in different places have different attitudes, and there are more women going into crew work in IATSE, but you will still get that thing of, oh, that girl wants us to do this, and that really sucks sometimes.
For inquiries, please contact info@eawlc.org or visit our website at www.eawlc.org.